Sarah, you're on mute.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sarah Keogh, I'm a dietitian, and you're all very welcome to join us here today. We are going to be talking about women's health for now and for into the future. We just have a few more people joining, and then we will get started. Just to let everybody know, we are recording this, so it is going to be available for people afterwards, that they'll be able to access it as well. So we still have a few more people coming in. Now, just to say to everyone, we will have some polls in the chat as we go along. If you want to just keep an eye out there and just fill in some of those for us as we're heading along with it. And you can pop any questions into the chat as well. And we will have time to have a few questions at the end too. A few more just joining, but I think we're nearly there. We might get started anyway. So I'm going to pop up these slides and we will have a look. So you're very welcome. As I said, we're going to talk about women's health, and I'm Sarah Keogh. I'm dietitian with the Coeliac Society, and we are running this webinar today as part of our Minding Me gluten-free course, which we run. This is our second year running it, usually from February to mid-March. And the idea with our Minding Me gluten-free course is that it gives people just loads of information about their overall health. It is obviously we're looking at kind of gluten-free, but also all the other aspects of our health, because celiac disease isn't the only thing that we need to look after with our health. So that's what we want to cover today. So we had eating to reduce cancer risk, and this week we're having a look at women's health. But if you haven't signed up to the Minding Me gluten-free course, you still can. If you can register at coeliac.ie. And you can access recipes and articles, and there's mindfulness and exercise as well. So do pop along there and have a look with us. So the topic today is women's health, and what I want to cover with you today is a few things about kind of just nutrition, some of the particular aspects of health that are really important for women, and look at really how to look after ourselves long term. To eat, and we have to remember that that's literally true. We are built out of the foods that we put into our bodies. So whether it's skin or hair, muscles, bones, doesn't matter what we're looking at, it's made out of the foods we're eating today and yesterday and last week, and we just remodel and rebuild. It's never too late to really benefit from adding some more nutrition into your diet or doing a little bit more exercise. And small changes add up, and they can make a really, really big difference to how healthy and well we are right now, but also right into the future. So when we talk about nutrition and women's health, I mean, we need to look at getting the basics right. We can talk about all kinds of, all the other things we might need to do, but you need to build it on a good foundation of healthy eating. So I just want to take you through some of the bits and pieces on healthy eating. And the first one is to make sure that you get something from all of your food groups every day. So when we look at food groups, we have, our fats and oils and our protein foods, our dairy products and our calcium foods, fruit and veg, starchy foods and carbohydrates. And these together, if we're eating something from each group every day, we have a very good chance then of getting all of the nutrients that we actually need to be healthy. But if you do cut out a whole food group, you can be missing out on more than you think, because I meet lots of people who are cutting out dairy at the moment, and you can do very well without dairy. But I find that most people know when they cut out dairy, they need to match up their calcium. But what I find most people don't know is that they don't get their iodine. So dairy is the major place where we get iodine in the Irish diet. So there's more nutrients often than the one you might think as being the main one when it comes to looking at these foods. So really important to make sure that you're getting something from each group every day. And if for any reason you're cutting out a whole food group, do make sure you get really reliable nutrition information about matching up what you need. So the first group is the carbohydrate or starchy foods. So this is all our bread and pasta and potatoes, the foods that we all know and love. So these are the foods that your body likes to use for fuel. But the idea of fuel is very important, because the amount of fuel that your body needs is really going to depend on how much exercise you actually do. So, if you've like an elite athlete and they're going off to a big event, going off to the Olympics, they can eat a big plate of pasta and that's going to be fine. But if, you're like a lot of people in Ireland, maybe the exercise is a bit of a walk now and again, or maybe just once a week, then those portion sizes are going to need to come down. Because unfortunately, when it comes to fuel, if we eat more fuel than we burn, our body doesn't waste any of it, it stores it. And so it can contribute to weight gain if we overdo it, with any food, not just with carbohydrate. So the other thing to look at with carbohydrates, though, is the type. because with carbohydrates, we have everything from our high fiber, whole grains, all the way through to our heavily processed white bread and sugar. And they are all technically carbohydrate, but from a nutrition point of view, there's a very, very big difference between your high fiber whole grain foods and then foods like sugar. Because sugar, it's carbohydrate, but when you eat sugar, you just get carbohydrate. There's no other nutrition in there. Whereas if you go for your whole grains, then you're going to get this whole package of nutrition that comes with it. And that includes your minerals, your iron. I don't know if you know, but iron is the major source, or bread is the major source of iron in the Irish diet. We get B vitamins, and we start to pick up our fiber. And fiber is an incredibly important nutrient. And I know any of you who are here with celiac disease will know that getting fiber sometimes on a gluten-free diet can be a bit of a struggle. And so we know that about 80% of people living in Ireland do not eat enough fiber. And we know, to be honest, that's pretty accurate across kind of Europe and America as well, that we're not brilliant on getting our fiber in. The problem I find with talking about fiber is that people generally believe they're eating enough fiber, even if they're not getting close to it. And we need fiber for lots of things. Fiber will help us to stay at a healthy weight. It makes a really big difference to weight. Fiber reduces risks of heart disease, cancer. We need it all together for a healthy bowel. Lots of people suffer with constipation, and it's quite common in people with celiac disease that after they're diagnosed, they might suddenly start getting constipated, because we often get a lot of fiber in things like whole grains. And of course, a lot of wheat bread and products are out when someone has celiac disease. So they need to lean into other foods for their fiber instead. So why are we not eating enough fiber? What I find is that people think there's a lot more fiber in food than's actually there, and that's usually the thing. Like we need 25 grams of fiber a day. When I talk to groups and I talk about, well, how much fiber is actually in food, we don't know. And that's okay. It's kind of not your job to know, but it means that we do end up missing out. So it's worth remembering that most of your high fiber breakfast cereals are going to give you 3 or 4 grams of fiber. Some will have more. But typically people are getting 3, 4, maybe 5 grams of fiber from a bowl of breakfast cereal. And if you think that you need 25 grams of fiber a day, if you only think about fiber at breakfast, you're definitely going to run into problems with that. So the first rule for fiber is that you must have fiber at every meal. So it's a good target to set for yourself. So that can be your high fiber cereal in the morning. It can be, if you're having bread at lunchtime, can you go for brown bread? If you're having potatoes at dinner time, can you eat them with skins? Brown rice is a good option. Maybe try some brown pasta. So lots of ways of thinking, am I getting some fiber in at every meal? But even looking at sort of the high fiber carbohydrate foods on their own, they won't give you enough fiber. So you do need to look at what can I do as well? And this is where we start looking at things like fruit and veg. But again, what are we getting? So if you eat an apple, if you have a serving of carrots, you're going to get around 2 grams of fiber from that. And this is why we talk about eating lots of fruit and veg every day. Now, some fruit will give you more fiber. Raspberries actually are very high in fiber. You might get 8 grams of fiber from a serving of raspberries. But most of your fruit and veg are going to be in around the 2 or 3 grams. Seeds are a brilliant way to add fiber. So if you can add any kind of seeds, put them over your cereal in the morning, put them into a yogurt, sprinkle them over a salad. The seeds are brilliant for adding fiber. And 2 dessert spoons of most seeds are going to give you about 6 grams of fiber a day. So if you're to have your porridge in the morning, put your seeds into it, maybe have some fruit, you're coming up to sort of 12 grams of fiber there. So, it often looks like a lot of fiber when we just talk about it, but actually it can be done. The other thing just to remember is beans and lentils are fantastic as well. So things like chickpeas, kidney beans, lentils. So if we look at things like hummus, soups that are made with lentils, all those fabulous vegetarian dishes that we see around at the moment that are based on beans and lentils are all going to be really high in fiber. So they're going to be fantastic as well. Now I would say to you, don't go out of here and try and get all 25 grams of fiber in one go. If you're not eating a whole lot of fiber and you suddenly increase it, your digestive system won't thank you. It can be quite tricky. So if you do want to increase your fiber, you need to do it slowly and gradually over 2 to 3 weeks. So just maybe step it up by about 3 grams, give your body about 3 days to get used to that, step it up again by another 3 grams, and just gradually work it up. There's no rush or panic on this, and you're far better off to take your time and just let your digestion gradually adapt to the change in fiber. I often meet people and they'd say, oh, well, I changed, I ate all this fiber, I felt really sick, so I stopped. And it's often that they just went out and did everything in one day. And really, we do see the gut, particularly your gut bacteria, don't like that, and it can cause problems. So slow and steady is better than trying to do it all enthusiastically in one go. So fruit and vegetables are going to be important. They're going to give us fiber, but they really give us a huge range of vitamins, some of our minerals, but really the plant nutrients, these antioxidants. You might have heard people talking about things like flavonoids and polyphenols and all of those. And these just do so many jobs in the body. They support your immune system, they keep your energy levels up, they really maintain the health of your body. So if you think of we tend to get a little bit of wear and tear on our bodies. We see it on the outside, we start to get older, we get some grey hairs and a few wrinkles and all of those things. But we also get some of that on the inside, not the grey hairs now, but we get some damage on the inside, just day-to-day wear and tear that's going on in our bodies, just like anything else. And that wear and tear, as it builds up and collects, is often what leads to some of the diseases of old age that we see. So, if you think of dementia as damage building up in your brain over your life, or heart disease as damage building up in your arteries over your life, and so on, we know that people who eat a lot of fruit and veg get 80% less stomach cancer. We know they get 45% less dementia, 40% less Alzheimer's. We know they get less heart disease. They even get less osteoporosis. So just by getting those fruit and veg in, getting lots of different fruit and veg in, it really supports your body, helps you to feel very well now, but it helps to maintain your body's health right into old age. So what do we need? So we talk about 5 to 7 servings of fruit and veg a day. Now, you can worry about what's a serving, but the easiest way to do this is just to make sure 1/3 of every meal is fruit or salad or veg. So it's the 1/3 rule. So when you look at your breakfast in the morning, try and make 1/3 of that something like fruit. When you look at your lunch, 1/3 of that vegetables or salad. So if you normally have a roll or a sandwich at lunchtime, that can end up being like 75 to 90% bread. So maybe you could add a bowl of vegetable soup there, add a side salad there. All of that is going to work. At dinner time, then, if you look at your plate, at least 1/3 of what goes on your plate for dinner is going, if you can make that salad or veg, that's going to work really, really well. And smoothies are brilliant. Sometimes people say, smoothies are full of sugar. But if you actually, the trick with smoothies is to do them half fruit, half veg. So you might do spinach leaves and berries or something like that. And then for the liquid, rather than always going for fruit juice, this is a great time to get in some milk for calcium, yogurt, things like that instead. And that way the overall sugar content is low, but because you're actually using the whole fruit and the whole veg, you still get all the fiber, and they work really, really well. The next group then are the dairy. Now, really what I'm talking about here are milk, cheese, and yogurt, because these are the ones with the calcium, and it's calcium that you're after here. Okay, so sadly, butter and cream don't have any calcium in them at all. And, we talk a lot about other sources of calcium that aren't dairy. So there's some great places to get it. If you don't take dairy, the next best thing to take for calcium is a calcium fortified soya milk. And just be careful with plant-based milks. You need to read the labels and make sure calcium has been added. Otherwise, they won't match up the calcium for the dairy. So most of the plant-based milks on their own won't have very much at all in the way of calcium. So if you are using like a calcium, if you're using like a soy milk, do check your label, make sure calcium has been added to do that. And the big place that we need calcium is to keep the bones nice and healthy. And osteoporosis, we know, is a huge issue for women. In Ireland, 1 in 2 women will actually break a bone due to osteoporosis. Now, men do get it as well. So 1 in 4 men will break a bone due to osteoporosis, but it's a lot of women who get this. And if you do have celiac disease, you are at an increased risk of osteoporosis. So just to say, for those of you who are not celiac here, if you've been diagnosed with osteoporosis at kind of a young age, definitely get a celiac test. It's quite common if someone has osteoporosis kind of when they're a little bit younger. It's often a sign that they actually have celiac disease and it just hasn't been picked up. So really important to follow that up for yourself. So osteoporosis is very common. And, sometimes when I talk about osteoporosis, people, particularly younger people, are thinking, oh, well, if you break a bone, who cares? You might be sick for 6 weeks. The thing about breaking a bone, when you're 20 or 25 and you break a bone, yes, it's going to heal up, in a few weeks. But, when you're older, if you're into your 60s, even into your 70s and you break a bone, that can take 6 months. It can take a lot longer. It's a big impact on quality of life with that. And here's when you're over 65, if you break your hip, 40% of people are dead within 6 months. It has a profound impact on health. And the reason that we need to talk about osteoporosis doesn't just arrive when we're in our 60s. It's something that we need to mind our bones our whole lives. So as teenagers, we put 90% of the density of our bone is in before we're 19 years old. So it's nearly in your teenage years that you decide whether or not you're going to get osteoporosis when you're older. But then, we need to mind our bones right throughout our lives. Doesn't matter what age you're at, you need to make sure you're getting plenty of calcium, whether that's from dairy or from other sources. Make sure your calcium is coming in. But the other big thing we need is vitamin D. And we need vitamin D to absorb and use the calcium that we eat. So And in Ireland, I mean, the big problem for vitamin D in Ireland is that we just don't get it. It's dull, miserable weather. And in the winter in Ireland, the sun, even if it's a sunny day, the sun is too weak to make vitamin D. So, even if you went out for a sunny, go for a walk, even today, we're in February, if you go for a walk today, you're really not going to make much in the way of vitamin D. It's not till we're kind of into the middle of March before the sun in Ireland is strong enough again for us to make vitamin D. But even at that, during the summer, we have a lot of cloud cover. We are correctly using sunscreens. So to be honest, we can struggle to get vitamin D from the sun all year round. Now, you can get vitamin D in foods like oily fish and eggs, but it's actually quite difficult to eat the full amount that you need. So to be honest, I really would recommend a vitamin D supplement, especially in the winter. And for anybody with celiac disease, we do recommend a vitamin D supplement all year round. But important to get like about 5 micrograms to 10 micrograms of vitamin D a day, especially in the winter. Really, really important, and does a huge amount to help support your bone health. So why do bones matter? So we've touched a little bit on this. So we know that 300,000 people in Ireland actually have osteoporosis. This is a really, really common disease. So we become too thin. So if you have a look at the bones on the outside both look the same, but it's on the inside where we can see there's always these little gaps in the bone, and that's normal. But in osteoporosis, these gaps are much bigger, and you can imagine how much easier it is to break this. This is not a dense, solid bone that we really need. The bones also take longer to heal. So if you do break a bone when you're a little bit older, when you have osteoporosis, it takes a lot longer for the bones to come back together. And the common places we see it is in the hip, in the wrist, or in the spine. So the thing to remember about bones is that bones are living tissue. Sometimes I see people and they kind of, well, I've grown my bones, but actually your body's taking little bits of bone away and replacing little bits of bone all the time. It's a constant. They're a living, replacing tissue. Just like everything else, we replace about 10% of our bones a year. And so we need to make sure there's plenty of nutrients coming in to make sure those bones are really well looked after. And we talk about calcium and vitamin D as key nutrients for bones, but we also need protein and magnesium as other nutrients to keep an eye on. And we do need at least 800 milligrams of calcium a day. So if we look at milk, cheese, and yogurt, what you're looking for is 3 of those a day from dairy. So one is a glass of milk, or if you put milk over breakfast cereal, that counts. Or if you like milky coffees, like a cappuccino or a latte, they're about half milk. So kind of 2 of those would be 1 glass of milk. A pot of yogurt is fine, the 125 gram pots. And please don't worry about the bit of sugar in a yogurt. If you're going to worry about sugar, you need to be looking at sugar in soft drinks and biscuits and sweets and cakes. The bit of sugar in a plain yogurt or a fruit yogurt is not doing any harm. Now, if you are having like a chocolate sauce yogurt with sprinkles on top and a big thick layer of caramel, that's dessert, and you're kidding yourself, and it is going to be full of sugar. But ordinary yogurt, please don't worry about the bit of sugar in there. Hard cheese like cheddar cheese has plenty of calcium. Softer cheeses like cottage cheese have quite a lot less calcium. Now, they'll still have a bit, but harder cheeses, and about 30 grams is a serving, which is about your 2 thumbs stuck together. And I have to say, I don't know anyone who eats that small an amount of cheese when they eat cheese. So lots of people, if they eat cheese, get plenty of calcium. As I said, the calcium fortified soy milk will be 1 glass would be a serving. So if you need 3 glasses of cow's milk for calcium, you need 3 glasses of your soy milk for calcium. But sardines are another very good place to pick up calcium. If you have a half a tin of sardines, because the bones are softened, and you eat those, they're the same as a whole glass of milk in terms of calcium. Now, what if you don't take dairy, or you're avoiding it, or you're lactose intolerant? Still need to be really, really careful for your calcium. So as I said, you're looking for the same 3 glasses of soy milk a day. The reason we tend to emphasize soy milk over other plant-based milks is the protein level is higher in soya. So milk is a big contributor, actually, protein in the diet. And soya would match it. It's pretty close. Whereas things like almond milk, oat milk, rice milk are much, much lower in protein. So people can be missing those nutrients. And that's why, particularly for children, rice and oat milk are definitely not recommended for children. If children don't take dairy, soy milk, calcium fortified soy milk is the one that we would look for that. So I said the sardines are brilliant. Almonds, now we often talk about almonds for calcium. 100 grams of almonds will be about the same as a glass of milk. Now you've got to watch it though, because calories will be really high in 100 grams of almonds. So it's just to let you know that it's there. They can give you a little bit of calcium, but you'd have to be eating quite a lot every day with that. Tofu can be quite good if you're a vegetarian and you eat tofu, or even not. You don't have to be vegetarian to enjoy it. It often has plenty of calcium in there as well. What if you are lactose intolerant? So about 10% of people in Ireland are lactose intolerant, and quite a few of those are celiac as well. So always remember, if you have lactose intolerance, if you found out you have lactose intolerance, you have to check for celiac disease as well. So around 20% of people who are lactose intolerant will actually turn out to be celiac. So always check that one. So what do you do? So you don't actually need to cut out dairy if you're lactose intolerant, because the lactose is mainly in milk itself. So you can use lactose-free milk, which will give you all of your calcium, so that'll be brilliant. Cheese is also very low in lactose, so the vast majority of people who are lactose intolerant can actually eat cheese, so they still get their calcium. Yogurt sits in the middle. Yogurt will have a little bit of lactose, so it depends on your tolerance. So some people can tolerate a little more lactose than others. So see how you go with the yogurt. Usually 1 to 2 dessert spoons is what people can manage. What if you don't take dairy at all? So the bad news is calcium is best absorbed when it comes from milk. So it is the best place to go. When we look at things like green vegetables, almonds, sesame seeds, and things like that, there is calcium in there, but your body struggles to get the calcium out of it. So you generally need a lot more of those foods, or a lot more calcium from those foods, to actually hit your absorption levels for it. Now, I hear lots of people talking about green vegetables and calcium. So the thing about it is that green veg do have calcium, but it is difficult to eat the amount of them you would need to get all of your calcium. Like if you look at this bag, you need to eat 7 of those bags of broccoli a day to get your calcium. And that's just to hit the 800 milligrams we were talking about. That's before we even look at absorption. And it's the same for most green vegetables. So green veg do have calcium, but you have to think about them as a top up to your main calcium source. You should not be using green vegetables as your main source of calcium. You're just not going to hit targets with that. But if you also have your calcium fortified soya milk, if you have your sardines, you know what I mean? So really just make sure, as I said, green veg, they're brilliant for lots of things, but I would not be relying on my green vegetables on their own for calcium. We mentioned vitamin D here, so we need to have our supplement in there. So, really just the sunshine has such an impact on it. So supplements to 5 to 10 micrograms a day, especially in winter, very, very important to do. The other really important mineral is magnesium, and that helps to strengthen bones, and it's really found in nuts and seeds. And that's the place. I'd often say to people, if you're not eating nuts and seeds, there's a good chance you're not hitting your targets for magnesium. So all nuts and seeds are brilliant. Almonds, Brazil nuts, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds. And you can do loads with these. Like you can grind them up and put them over breakfast cereals. They go really nicely if you like making bread. You can go into that, sprinkle them over salads, pop them in a yogurt. Loads of different ways just to add these foods in. So kind of a good handful a day would be brilliant, both for fiber actually, but as well as for your magnesium. On to the bad news. Both caffeine and alcohol are linked with poor bone health. Now that doesn't mean you have to give up coffee. What we do know is that you want to keep drinks like coffee to about 4 cups a day. Now I have to emphasize, most people in Ireland drink mugs of coffee, so that's 2 mugs or 4 cups of coffee a day. Tea is a little bit less, because what's actually interesting is with tea, it looks like tea, other compounds in tea might actually be protective for bone, but mainly the coffee, because the caffeine is much, much higher in coffee with that. And really, if there's a family history of osteoporosis, if you're at a higher risk, maybe if you have celiac disease or you have other medications that affect your bone, maybe just keep the coffee down to sort of the 2 mugs a day and drink something else as well. And definitely with alcohol has a big, big impact on bone health. So we talk about keeping alcohol to healthy limits, which I'll touch on in a minute. So protein, just for overall health, to maintain muscles, but also really, really important to maintain bones. And protein is also, it's your hair. Your hair is almost entirely made out of protein, skin, nails, and as I said, muscles, bones. Even your immune system is going to rely on a good amount of protein for health. And we do need to get protein foods at least twice a day. I have to say, I'm a bit of a fan of protein 3 times a day. But what we don't need is massive amounts. What's really beneficial is that you're getting protein more often in through the day. So what's a good idea is something like 1 egg at breakfast, just to bring in that protein. Or, you could have a yogurt or a high protein yogurt in the morning. The seeds that we've talked about for fiber and magnesium will actually give you some protein as well. So if you're putting seeds onto your cereal, you're sort of ticking quite a few boxes for health with those. Peanut butter on toast will give you a bit of protein in the mornings. At lunchtime, I see a lot of women just having soup and bread, and there's very little protein in there. So really make sure you're getting beans or lentils into your soup, or you're getting chicken or tuna or cheese or something with the bread, that there's a bit of protein coming in there at lunchtime as well. I see lots of women missing protein at this time. And then at dinner time, if you're having meat or chicken or fish, you want a piece that's about the size of the palm of your hand. You don't need more than that, okay? Unless you're sort of bodybuilding for the Olympics, you don't need more than the palm of your hand of meat or chicken or fish. And if you're vegetarian, make sure you are hitting your protein targets. So you need to be getting at least, sort of, if you look at your fist, at least 3 fists of beans or lentils every day. And you probably need to top that up with, some nuts or seeds or yogurt or eggs if you're vegetarian. So just make sure there's plenty of protein coming in. And particularly if you are vegetarian or vegan, do make sure you're getting protein at 3 meals a day. Otherwise, it can be a little bit more difficult to hit protein targets. Now, you can absolutely do it, but just make sure 3 meals a day for that. Fats and oils are going to be important for our overall health. But the main thing to think about with fats and oils is actually the type. And this is where we start talking about the saturated fats and the polyunsaturated. And the bad news is that saturated fats are the ones that raise cholesterol, and they're linked with an increased risk of heart disease. I know there's been lots of coverage recently online and on social media that, maybe butter is actually good for us and all the rest. And unfortunately, the science is just not reflecting that. I wish it was. It'd be great. I'd love to be able to tell you you can tuck into the butter, but the science is not showing us that. So we need to limit, not ban, but limit. So limiting foods like cream and butter, things like biscuits, cakes and pastries, because we use saturated fat to make them. And then processed meats, so sausages, black and white pudding, pate, salami, all of those just need to be limited. So, if you're looking at that list and you're thinking, right, I'm having 3 or 4 a day from that list, maybe nudge it back. I wouldn't be in a big hurry to restrict cheese unless you really had quite high cholesterol, and cutting back on the other foods hasn't done the trick. So cheese would be sort of the last thing I'd be thinking of kind of saying to people to reduce, because it's so important for your calcium. The healthy types of fats to go for then are the polyunsaturated. Basically, your olive oil, your sunflower oil, your rapeseed oil are really healthy types of oils to use. Still in small amounts. We don't need gallons of them. We do need a little bit, but we don't need a huge amount. And watch out as well for coconut oil, which is heavily marketed as being healthy, but it's still a saturated fat. It definitely raises cholesterol. So a little bit like butter, some coconut oil now and again will be fine, but your main cooking oil should still be your olive oil and your rapeseed oil. So I can't talk about health and not talk about omega-3 fats, and these are incredibly important for long-term health. So they really help, particularly to support the brain. We talk about them a lot for heart disease, but they're very, very important for brain function. So people who eat lots of fish or who take fish oils, they get less dementia, they get less Alzheimer's. But you don't even have to wait till you're older to get benefits. We see people who take their omega-3s have better focus. So that's really good reasons to get these fats into the body. And your oil-rich fish is by far the best place to go for them. So things like salmon, mackerel, herring. Now your white fish like cod and haddock, they have a tiny bit of omega-3, but it's not a huge amount. Sea bass is the only white fish that actually has a decent amount of omega-3. But brilliant if you can have, the sardines, the mackerel, the salmon. And doesn't matter what you do to them, fresh or frozen or tinned, they keep the omega-3s. You'll notice I don't have tuna on this list. Now, tuna is great. It's a really good source of protein and vitamin D, but tinned tuna generally doesn't have omega-3. Whereas if you're going for tinned fish, tinned salmon or sardines do, so they'll actually be great. Now, I'm going to mention nuts and seeds here. They are brilliant for lots of things, but when it comes to omega-3, the type of omega-3 that we see in nuts and seeds is different to the type that we get in fish. And although it does have great benefits elsewhere in the body, we see much better brain effects from fish omega-3s than we do from plant omega-3s. So it's brilliant if you can really get your fish going with that. And, once or twice a week for fish is a really, really good. We do see huge benefits to health long-term in people who are getting their fish in a couple of times a week. So we mentioned alcohol briefly in terms of the bone, but there's a couple of things we need to pay attention to with alcohol, because it's one of the things, particularly in Ireland, we're a little bit, I don't say we're a bit silly about alcohol quite a bit. And, we used to be able to talk about alcohol as being good for your heart in small amounts, but the World Cancer Research Fund came out a while ago and they said, right, alcohol is officially carcinogenic and that we should all stop drinking. And particularly when it comes to breast cancer, there's no safe level of alcohol when it comes to risk for breast cancer. So even one glass of wine a day, we see that little bit of an increased risk for breast cancer in women with the alcohol. So, it's one just to really think about limiting, which, in Ireland, we're not terribly good at. So we talk about 17 standard drinks a week for men, but for women, it's 11 standard drinks a week. And one standard drink is half a pint of beer or cider. It's So, you know, if women are drinking pints, it's a maximum of kind of 5 pints a week. Beer, the bottles are in between, so they're kind of 330 mils. So you probably want to just keep it kind of to a lower level as well. The one to watch is wine. I see lots of women going over on their alcohol every week because they don't realize how much alcohol there actually is in wine. So if you look at the measure there, the measure for wine is 100 mils. Now, I don't know how many of you ever actually poured out 100 mils wine and had a look at it. It's quite tiny. So if you think of a normal bottle of wine, you should be getting 7 glasses out of that bottle, not 3. But that's based on a 12% white wine. If you have a red wine, if you're up at, if you're looking at a 14.5% red wine, the measure there, would you believe, is 75 mils. Which you really should measure out and have a look at. You'd be offended if someone handed you a glass with that little wine in it. But it's worth just realizing that that is the measure, that, you know, technically, if we were being very good, we'd be getting 10 glasses of wine out of a bottle of red wine. So just watch it, because it's very easy to go over. And I think the problem with wine, particularly here, is we tend to think about wine like beer, and we drink it like beer. We sort of put it in a big glass and we gulp it. But wine is a spirit. You have to think about wine. It's closer to whiskey than beer. So small glass and sipped is really the way to go with wine, because, you know, if you drink a whole bottle of red wine yourself, you can be getting up to like 8 gin and tonics in terms of the alcohol. You know, and lots of people would never drink 8 gin and tonics, but over an evening would drink a bottle of red wine. So just really keep an eye on the amount of alcohol that you're taking from wine. It's very, very easy to go over with that. But just generally, we know that wine is the major cause of, it's one of the biggest causes of heart disease in Ireland. We don't tend to think of alcohol as heart disease, because this thing for years, oh, red wine is good for your heart and so on. But actually, alcohol is a big cause of stroke. It's also, as mentioned, a big cause of osteoporosis. It's in terms of cancer, it increases risk of things like mouth cancer, breast cancer, stomach cancer, colon cancer. I know this is getting very cheerful as I'm going down this list, but it's just to be aware. I think a lot of us, because the culture now is to drink quite a bit, we sort of dismiss, or we don't tend to think about some of the effects. Now, I'm not saying that you have to all stop drinking, okay? But what I would say is maybe just be a little more sensible about how we drink, how much we drink when we do drink, and how often we drink. So, as I said, the World Cancer Research Fund would like us to give it up altogether. What I would say in terms of alcohol, if you do drink, maybe when you're drinking 2 drinks at most, maybe 3, like 2 really would be the one to look at, and make sure you have several days a week that are alcohol free, so that you do give your body a nice big break from it. Now, a lovely thing to do from a nutrition point of view is balance out your plate properly. So when you look at your plate for lunch and dinner, I'd love you to be heading in this direction, that half your plate is your vegetables, your salad, a quarter of your plate is going to be your protein, so beans, meat, chicken, fish, and a quarter of it then is your carbs. Now watch this one. Most of us, when we dish up pasta, we cover the whole plate of pasta and then put everything else on top, which is just too much carbohydrate. So pasta or rice should only be about a quarter of your plate. So, you know, people even often say to me, carbs are very fattening. It's like, well, they are if you have 4 servings every time you sit down with them. If you have the correct serving, the 1 serving, they're absolutely fine. And then, of course, it leaves room on your plate to pop in the extra vegetables that we really want to be going for. So balance out your plate nicely, and that works really, really well for just, it's, you know, it's a lovely snapshot. If you're not sure where to start with nutrition, start there, look at your plate like that. And then if you can get that right, you'll find an enormous amount will fall into place for you. Now, I do want to touch on heart disease quite specifically for women. I don't know if you know, but the 4th of February was Wear Red for Your Heart Day. And it's really specifically looking at heart disease for women, because we still have this idea that heart disease is something that happens to men, but actually just as many women in Ireland get heart disease as men. So 1 in 3 men in Ireland die from heart disease, 1 in 3 women in Ireland die from heart disease. And so the thing I really want to emphasize here is you've got to know what it looks like when women are having heart attacks. Because when we talk about having a heart attack, we always have this idea of someone having chest pain, and maybe falling over. And it's this, so what we talk about is, you know, chest pain, or you might have pain in your arm, or you might have pain going up into your jaw. You know, you might fall over, and that sounds great, but that's actually mostly how men have a heart attack. But actually in women, heart attacks can look quite different. So sometimes women will absolutely get the chest pain, and if you're getting the chest pain, please call the ambulance. But the common sign for heart attack in women is nausea and vomiting. And it may or may not also have shoulder pain. So women tend to get pain at the back of their shoulders, so across their left shoulder or across both shoulders. So in the same way that chest pain in men means call an ambulance, nausea and vomiting, especially with shoulder pain, is in women, call an ambulance. And I find that most women have never heard that. And it's a huge problem because women actually then don't go to the hospital in time. And actually, there's issues even when they get to the hospital. Quite often, sometimes women are misdiagnosed when they're told, oh, you're having a tummy bug. And actually, there was a report in the UK last year, I think it was 2020, and they identified, going through medical records, over 5,000 women who died in hospital because when they initially went in having their heart attack, because it wasn't chest pain, they didn't realize that's what it was. Now, things are improving, which is great, but just to watch for yourself. And the thing about the nausea and vomiting in women with heart attacks is it can actually go on for a few days. So often women think they're having a tummy bug. So they're not thinking, oh, I need to go to the hospital. Now, you're quite sick with this. This isn't kind of, a mild bit of nausea and you go on with your day. You're quite sick with it. You can have, or it can be really bad indigestion with it. But for yourself, if you're having really bad nausea, vomiting, or indigestion, or really pain, that really bad sort of pain in your chest that's in your more stomach than chest, and especially if there's any shoulder pain with it, do give your doctor a ring. It's in the same way, we've all heard of men who have had indigestion for 3 days that turned out to be a heart attack, but women are more likely to get that digestion, stomach focus pain as well. So really, if you haven't heard that before, will you make sure you tell your friends? I work a lot with retirement groups, and the amount of people who've never heard that before. So really important that you know that that's what you're looking out for women. So a couple of things: keep your cholesterol healthy. Will you get your cholesterol checked? If you're over 35, you need to get your cholesterol checked, and you need to do it every couple of years. Your total cholesterol should be less than 5, but do ask for the breakdown. Your doctor will have it. So your LDL, or your bad cholesterol, should be less than 3, and your HDL, or your good cholesterol, should be more than 1 to 1.5. And what really puts your good cholesterol up is getting out and doing a bit of exercise. So exercise drives this one up. You can actually make a big difference to your cholesterol by getting out and going for a good walk. And what about menopause? So we talk about this for women a huge amount, and thankfully it has actually become a proper conversation in the last few years to look at. One of the things that we do know about menopause is that it can affect a few things. We do see increased weight. Sometimes at that stage we have our lovely estrogen and it goes away around menopause, so perimenopause and into menopause. So lots of women suddenly find the weight is coming on a little bit harder to shift. Now, can I say 2 things? Like, we don't all have to be super skinny to be healthy. This idea that we all have to look like the cover of a magazine, we have to actually give ourselves a break on this. There is nothing wrong or harmful about having a bit of padding on your body. It's absolutely fine. Really, when we talk about weight from a health point of view, it's where the weight is actually impacting on your health. Is it now causing high blood pressure? Is it, affecting your mobility? That's where we might think about looking at weight. But this, I've got for years, I've had women and young girls coming into the clinic because they have a little bit of, I don't know what we're measuring ourselves up to sometimes with weight. I think we could really give ourselves a break on it. So, but at menopause, we can see the weight going up a little bit. But as I said, if it's not driving your health, if it's not impacting your health, it's fine if you have a little bit of padding on. One of the other things that we see is energy levels can change, and that's definitely a time to talk to your GP about it, because things like HRT can make a huge difference. And there was a lot of scaremongering about HRT years ago, and a lot of women stopped. They were talking about reports on breast cancer. The research that we have now is telling us very clearly that doesn't happen. We are not seeing that as a risk, and HRT can make an enormous difference to women's energy levels as we get older. So, it's a conversation to have with your doctor with that, if you're finding coming up to menopause. So you don't have to be fully in menopause. Perimenopause, so the lead up to it, can be 5 to 7 years. And for women, that can affect their sleep. They can be waking up at night. They can be having night sweats. Really find a big drop in energy with that. So, if you're kind of coming close to menopause age and you're suddenly finding not sleeping, and, this is an age where a lot of women drop out of work or step back at work because they think, oh, I'm just getting older, I can't handle this or whatever. But actually the problem is they just need a bit of HRT. And really it's the perimenopause. And there's some wonderful books out there. There's a Canadian gynecologist called Jen Gunter, and she's written some excellent books. She's a great book called The Menopause Manifesto. Really would advise anyone coming close to, actually anybody really, to have a good read of it coming up to menopause. Just gives a lot of very, very good and practical information there. The bad news, we see increased risk of heart disease and osteoporosis after the menopause. So women are a little bit at risk anyway, but it does take a bit of a jump. And that's why what I've talked to you about today in terms of looking after your bone health is it's important all the time, but especially important if you're coming up to menopause or you're past menopause as well. And keep an eye on your heart disease. So get your cholesterol checked, get your blood pressure checked. Just mind yourself. Just take those little checks to keep an eye on it. Now, a question I'm often asked is there a supplement I can take for menopause? Is there a special diet I can go on? And The answer is no. This is researched and researched and researched. And, people have looked at, do you take soy? Do you not take soy? Do you avoid meat? Do you cut out dairy? There's nothing we're seeing makes a big difference. A few studies have suggested, and I use that, it's not a very clear-cut thing. They're saying that if you have what's called fermented soy, so things like miso or tofu, in some women it reduces hot flashes in menopause, but in the studies it definitely doesn't work for everybody. And it is fermented soy. So the unfermented soy, which we tend to use in Ireland, in like soy milk and soy yogurt, they don't see the benefit for it. So I'd say if someone wanted to try that, it's worth a try. But if don't like those foods. But the big one we see is adding in some exercise, just keeping a little bit active. I know I'm showing two people jogging along here. You don't have to take up running. You can if you want, but just make sure you don't drop your exercise. I find lots of women, would be reasonably active in their 20s, 30s, even into their 40s, but somewhere in the 50s, that activity seems to just fall away. And we seem to just do a bit of a walk now and again. But actually, if you can maintain, if you were doing Pilates, if you were going out for a bit of a run, if you were going to the gym, can you maintain that? Don't think that there's an age where you have to stop. There really isn't. And for long-term health, if you can keep that lovely exercise, and doing a few weights, so important for the body. I'm not saying we all have to try and be like bodybuilders or anything, but just keep that strength. Something like Pilates or yoga is wonderful for just keeping a little bit of muscle and flexibility on the body as well. And we do know that kind of just a generally balanced diet with some exercise coming in from a lifestyle point of view will help with symptoms. But the big one is chat to your GP, have a look at, do you need HRT? Do you need some help along with that? And that's the one that'll actually make the big difference for you. So that's everything I wanted to cover with you. I just wanted to flag, we have some, a whole network. Clodagh has come in to work with us on membership in the Coeliac Society, and she's doing fantastic work setting up smaller support groups around the country. We've opened our office in Clondalkin and we have our shop there now. So lots and lots of hard to find gluten-free foods there. But the first Coeliac support group in Clondalkin meeting is going to be on the 1st of March at 7 p.m. It's going to be at the East Village at the Round Tower in Clondalkin. And if you want to find out any more, just email us into the office or have a check on our website for that. And, absolutely everybody is welcome to come along and just really find out, get a bit of support and find the places where you can eat that are gluten-free around the area. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope we had some information there that's of use to you. Thank you again to Promise Gluten Free for sponsoring our whole Minding Me Gluten Free program. It's been fantastic to get that support. And just to say to you, we're very active on Instagram. So follow us on Instagram at Coeliac Ireland. And it will just I'll keep you up to date, let you know when we have the fresh gluten-free cakes in the shop, but also about our support groups that are coming up. And absolutely feel free to get in touch. We can help you out with anything. We are here for our members. So do let us know if we have topics for webinars that you might like, or if there's more information that you'd like to see, do get in touch. So I'm going to stop sharing these slides now, and we will go and have a look and see if we have any questions. So if you have any questions, pop them up into the chat there, and I'm going to take a look now. And straight in. Okay, can calcium supplements have side effects on the heart? They can if you're taking them in huge doses. So this was another big scare a few years ago. They were looking at women who had very, very high doses of calcium and going over about 2,000 milligrams of calcium a day. It seems to be fine. So even with supplements, they'll generally give you about 800 to 1,000 milligrams a day. I would say if you can get your calcium from the dairy, it definitely is brilliant, but I wouldn't be, if you need to take a calcium supplement, I wouldn't be worried about it, but just take the amount you're recommended. I know sometimes we have this idea that like if one is good, 10 must be better. But if you just stay within the dose, no, absolutely fine. It's only if you're taking very, very high amounts of it, that'd be an issue. I had a hysterectomy last year and I've just turned 50. What should I do to stay healthy? Just what we've talked about, just normal healthy eating. There's no special diet to look at with that. Now give yourself a chance. A hysterectomy is a big operation. It's a really, really big surgery. So I see women taking about a year actually to fully come back to themselves after it. So, do make sure you're eating kind of well. And as you're feeling better about getting out to do a little bit of exercise, I would. And I would look at, once you're better, look at maybe doing Pilates with a physiotherapist, just to get those tummy muscles tightened back up again. Because as I said, it can be quite a big surgery. So it's good to just make sure your abdomen, because they're all your balance muscles for when you're older. So if you have any surgery on your abdomen, once you're kind of healed and you're able to get out again, and the reason I'd say a physiotherapist is because they'll tell you, are you ready? And most physiotherapists, you know, locally, a lot of them are doing Pilates classes, and they're very good just to come into. So I would look for that. Can HRT be taken with coronary artery disease? Marina, can I say to you, will you check in with your GP on that? I don't know your whole medical history, so I don't want to give you a definite answer, but that's, you know, your local pharmacy or your GP will definitely have you. Is soy milk safe for hyperthyroidism? As far as I know, it is, but you know what? I might look into that in a bit more detail and come back to you. So Emma, if you want to email us at info@coeliac.ie, I will come back to you and I'll just look into it. I'm 99% sure it is safe, but I'd love just to check it out in a bit more detail for you before I give you a definite look. Someone here is asking, can you get gluten-free lentils? There's definitely some on the app at the moment, as far as I know. I know it's been a nuisance recently. A lot more companies we're seeing may contain gluten on lentils. And it's been creeping up for a few years, but a lot recently. And we were talking to a couple of the big supermarkets, and the issue is there's such a demand for lentils now that they're getting them from a wider swathe of suppliers, and they're just not able to guarantee they're gluten-free anymore. So we definitely have some in the food list. And actually, normally, even though lentils aren't naturally gluten-free, we haven't had them in the food list before, but we are doing it this year because it's exactly that question, trying to find them. So they will be in that. If you can take vitamin D supplements, what are the best foods for getting it naturally? Salmon, hands down. Salmon 2 or 3 times a week, that's where to get your vitamin D. You get a little bit in eggs, but difficult to eat enough eggs to do it. But if you were to have an egg for breakfast every day, give you a bit of a top up on your vitamin D, but your salmon 2 or 3 times a week would be fabulous for that. How much magnesium should we take in a day? Is it okay to take it as a supplement? It is fine to take it as a supplement. I'm always a fan of trying to get it from food because, you know, we were talking about the nuts and seeds and, you know, there's so many other nutrients you get with that. Whereas if you just take a magnesium supplement, that's all you get. But you need about 380 milligrams of magnesium a day. If you wanted to do that. But, you know, if you're buying a supplement, it'll tell you on the back what the reference intake is, or the RDA is for that. Do you need to take calcium if you're already on Prolia injections for osteoporosis? Yes, you do, but not necessarily calcium supplements. Again, if you can get your milk or your yogurt or your cheese in, that's going to work really, really well. Is smoked salmon high in omega-3? Yes, actually it is. Very, very high in salt as well. So, you know, I wouldn't be, particularly if your blood pressure is high, but it's still really high in omega-3. So it's great if you're not into other types of fish. What brand of miso and tofu are gluten-free? That is a spectacular question. Off the top of my head, I actually don't know. I'm going to have to check that in the book for you and come back to you. As far as I know, tofu should be naturally gluten-free, but I'm always hesitant. I'll need to just specifically check that one out for you. Okay, that looks like it is all of the questions that we have. I don't know if anybody wants to ask a question. Okay, I think that is everything. I'm going to check one more onto the questions here and we'll just make sure, because I'm sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay, I think that's everyone. Well, look, you're very, very welcome for joining today. Thank you. It was lovely to have so many of you here. And look, we'll be running more webinars again. So do keep an eye on our Instagram page. So at Coeliac Ireland. Do check us out on the website. We have on our resources and events, we have webinars. If you look on the tab there, and we do webinars really quite regularly through the year on all kinds of different topics. And if there's something you'd like us to cover, do get in touch and let us know. And I will see you again the next time. So take care. Bye-bye.